She abandoned him and their 5 kids. 10 years later she came back and was stunned to find what he'd done without her. Stay tuned, you won't believe what she found. And tell us in comments where you are watching from. Jackson Reed had always put family first. He was far from flawless, but his heart was in the right place, and for nearly a decade, he thought that mattered. Then one morning, he woke up to find Natalie gone. No warning signs, no argument, just a crumpled note left beside the coffee pot with a chilling sentence. "I'm sorry, I just can't do this anymore." She hadn't only walked away from him, she'd left behind 5 children. Marcus, Elijah, Ava, and the youngest 2 who could barely string a full sentence together. One was still clinging to pacifiers, the other had just mastered tying shoelaces. The emptiness in their home that day rang louder than any goodbye. The kids kept asking questions no father should ever have to answer. Where did Mommy go? Was it because of us? Jackson didn't have the heart to tell them the truth, so he told bedtime stories full of hope, stories that one day she might return. But days blurred into seasons, and she never did. The storm that followed nearly broke him. He had to resign from one of his warehouse shifts just to keep up with daycare pickups and doctor appointments. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were often instant noodles and overcooked eggs. He forgot school forms, spilled milk on report cards, missed calls from teachers. But somehow, he endured. Every day started before dawn. At 4:45 a.m., while the city still slept, he'd clutch the same cracked mug Natalie once adored. It no longer reminded him of her. It symbolized everything he refused to lose. By 6 a.m., their tiny kitchen buzzed with chaos. Cereal spilled on counters, toothbrushes forgotten, Ava crying over tangled hair. He barely had time for breakfast, but hearing his kids laugh, that kept him alive. On the warehouse floor, the steady rhythm of forklifts and conveyor belts gave him rare moments of clarity. His manager, Todd, often shook his head in disbelief. 5 kids, man? You deserve a medal. Jackson would just nod, hiding the tears that sometimes came behind the wheel of his parked van during breaks. Marcus, the oldest, became more than a big brother. He was Jackson's anchor. He'd help tuck in the little ones, heat up leftovers, and step in when Jackson's exhaustion won. But Jackson saw what it cost him. The quiet stares, the swallowed frustration, the way his shoulders seemed to carry more than they should. There were nights Jackson sat alone, staring at overdue bills, wondering how much more he could take. But then Ava would whisper, "You're my hero, Dad," and the ache in his chest would soften just enough to keep going. While others climbed corporate ladders and celebrated milestones, Jackson patched leaky ceilings, sewed Halloween costumes by hand, and became a bedtime storyteller, a soccer coach, a one-man village. Then, exactly a decade after Natalie vanished, everything shifted again. It was just another Thursday. He came home, kicked off his boots, and sorted through the usual pile of mail, bills, junk, school flyers. And then he saw it. A letter. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Alicia. His heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat. 10 years, 10 birthdays, 10 Christmases, 10 first days of school, all without her. And now here she was, reaching out. Evan Parker stood in his mudroom, still coated in sawdust from the job site, when he found the envelope. No stamp, no sender, but the cursive scrawl on the front sent a jolt through him. Natalie. 10 years of scraped knees, school plays, growing pains and silent nights had passed without a word from her. And now, this letter. His hand trembled slightly as the noise of family life swelled behind him. His kids laughing in the kitchen, arguing about who got the last cookie, the dog barking for table scraps. This was the world he'd built from the ruins she left behind, and suddenly it felt like it was being pulled into question. He didn't open it. Not that night. Not the next. For almost a week he carried the envelope in the inside pocket of his flannel jacket, close to his chest but untouched. Every time he crouched to adjust scaffolding or lifted a plank, he felt it pressing into his ribs like a question he wasn't ready to answer. On Friday, something else shifted. His supervisor at the construction firm, a no-nonsense guy named Ray, called him into the trailer after the crew clocked out. "Shut the door," Ray said, beaming. "You've been steady for years now, man. You've shown grit, patience, and the kind of quiet commitment we want in leadership. We're offering you the project lead position." Evan's pulse stilled. More money, enough to get Sarah her braces, finally buy a decent used car, maybe even stash away something for Madison's future. But Ray kept going. "There's a catch. You'll be needed more often. Weekends, later nights, site walkthroughs, client calls. A real shift in load." Evan nodded, not surprised. More work meant less home. More gaps for Madison. the oldest, to keep filling. That night at their battered kitchen table, the kids long since asleep, Evan sat across from Madison, the flickering light catching her tired eyes. "I got offered a new role today," he said. Her expression lit up before she even spoke. "That's great, right?" He smiled, then hesitated. "It means I'd be around a lot less." She nodded after a pause, then said gently, "We'll figure it out, Dad. We always do." He knew she meant it, but he also knew what she'd already sacrificed. That night, alone, Evan finally opened the envelope. The handwriting he hadn't seen in a decade poured out a storm of apologies. Natalie admitted to crumbling under the weight of motherhood, to disappearing out of fear and shame. She'd gotten help, found God again, rebuilt her foundation. And now she wrote, "I'd like to see the children. I want to try again. If you can find it in your heart to forgive me, maybe one day they will too." Evan gripped the letter tightly, the words echoing against years of pain. Forgiveness, for all the birthday candles blown out without her, for the panic attacks Sarah had at night, for the times Madison had to lie to her siblings, pretending everything was fine, for the questions none of them should have had to ask. And now Natalie was back, asking to step into a life they had to rebuild without her. She wanted a second chance, but she'd never once asked what her vanishing act had cost them. Evan folded the letter and set it down on the old wooden table, the surface worn from years of family dinners and homework nights. He didn't know what to do with it. Not yet. His kids had earned the right to know, and more importantly, the right to choose. But a quiet shift had already taken root in his gut, and this time, he wouldn't be swayed by emotion or nostalgia. He'd spent over a decade shielding them, sacrificing sleep, money, time. He wasn't about to drop his guard now. The envelope remained untouched on the dining table for 2 full days, visible to everyone but still off limits. Madison looked at it every time she walked past. Jordan asked once if it was serious. Evan just said, "Yes, but not yet." The timing never felt right. Not when Logan had a fever, not when the sink was leaking again, and not when he could barely keep his eyes open from back-to-back shifts. But by Sunday evening, with dinner winding down, he knew it was time. They'd eaten quietly, only the clatter of forks and the occasional giggle from the twins breaking the silence. After the dishes were cleared and the younger ones headed off to brush their teeth, Evan remained seated. "Guys," he said, keeping his voice even, "there's something I need to talk to you about." Madison froze immediately. He picked up the envelope, holding it up like a fragile artifact. "This came earlier in the week. It's from your mom." The room went still, not a sound, not a single movement. "She says she wants to reconnect, that she's sorry, that she's changed." He didn't sugarcoat anything. He read every line aloud, the words catching in his throat even though his voice stayed calm. His hands, though, wouldn't stop trembling. When he finally looked up, Madison's face was stone, tight jaw, cold eyes. "Why now?" she asked. "Why not when we were little and scared and needed her?" Jordan stared hard at the wood grain on the table. "Is she really coming back?" The twins said nothing, just fidgeted in their chairs. Logan hugged his knees up to his chest. Evan nodded. "She reached out, that's all. No decisions have been made, but I needed you to hear it first because it affects all of us." "She doesn't just get to walk back in," Madison said sharply. "We're not some Airbnb she can book after a decade." Nobody argued. That night, Evan found Madison in the hallway, staring at an old photo taped to the wall, one from 6 years ago, all of them in mismatched Christmas sweaters. "She wasn't there," Madison murmured. "I know," Evan said. "I don't even remember what her voice sounds like anymore." Evan didn't try to fix it. He just stood beside her in silence. Over the next few days, the air in the house changed. Logan cried at school and didn't know why. Jordan kept asking questions Evan couldn't answer. The twins, usually inseparable bundles of laughter, had grown quiet, uncertain. Natalie's letter had seeped into their home like a silent fog. Heavy, invisible, and impossible to shake. One night, as Evan tucked Logan in, the little boy whispered, "Does Mommy still love us?" Evan's chest tightened. "I think she does," he said gently. "But love doesn't always come with answers." Logan blinked. "Are you going to let her come home?" Evan paused, brushing a hand over his son's hair. "I don't know, but I won't do anything without you guys." And he meant it. After everything they'd been through, He would not let this undo them. The house felt weighed down, like it was holding its breath. Madison barely spoke. Jordan was irritable. Logan had started climbing into Evan's bed again in the middle of the night, just like he had when the nightmares used to come. Even Evan, usually calm under pressure, began making mistakes at work, cutting boards too short, losing track of time, standing still for too long while holding a wrench. Ray noticed. "You good?" he asked, pulling Evan aside in the break room. After a moment of hesitation, Evan told him. "Natalie reached out. It's been over a decade. Now she says she wants to come back." Ray let out a low whistle. 10 years? That's not a visit, that's a resurrection. Evan gave a half laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't know what she wants. I don't know what to say." Ray didn't offer advice, just one steady line. "Whatever you choose, protect your peace." That evening, Evan sat alone at the kitchen table, the letter in front of him again. The words on the page hadn't changed, but the ache in his chest had grown sharper. The next morning, he called an attorney. He explained everything, her sudden disappearance, the letter, the emotional fallout, and asked one question. "What are my options?" The attorney didn't sugarcoat anything. "You've had full custody for over 10 years. She has no legal rights unless a judge grants them, but if she pushes, be prepared." That was all Evan needed to hear. Back at home, Madison had already been doing her own digging. "I found her," she said, sliding a phone across the table. Evan leaned in, and there she was, Natalie, smiling in photos beside unfamiliar faces, but the captions told a different story. Posts asking for help, donation links, one campaign titled "Fresh Start After Hardship." "She's not here because she loves us," Madison said quietly. "She's here because she's drowning." Evan stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. This wasn't about family or remorse. It was about survival. The very next morning, he hired a private investigator. "No assumptions," he told him. "Just the truth. I need to know what we're really dealing with." That night, Jordan came to him. "Dad, can she take us if she wants to?" "Absolutely not," Evan said without pause. "But what if she tries?" Jordan's eyes were wide, scared. Evan knelt down and looked him dead in the eyes. "She walked away. I never did. I won't let anyone tear this apart." And he meant it with everything in him. Later that evening, he stood in the hallway, watching all 5 of them in sleep's grip. Madison dozing upright over a textbook, Jordan tangled in covers, Logan curled up clutching his favorite dinosaur plush. He had held them together when everything else was falling apart. If Natalie thought she could just walk back into that, he'd fight with everything he had to protect them. The call came on a Wednesday. The number was unfamiliar, but something told Evan to pick up. A hesitant voice answered his hello. "Evan, it's me." "Natalie." She didn't waste time. "I just want to see them, that's all I'm asking. One meeting." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the wreckage left behind, just a desperate request. Evan said nothing at first. He let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "If they don't want to see you," he finally said, "then that's it. No ambushes, no guilt. It ends there." She paused. "Okay." He chose the location carefully. A city park they used to visit when the kids were small. Public, open, familiar. A place with easy exits. When he told the kids, Madison only nodded, her jaw tight. Jordan asked what everyone else was thinking. "Do we have to go?" "No," Evan said gently. "None of you have to do anything you're not ready for." Still, they all agreed. Some closure might be better than none. The day arrived, wrapped in clouds and chill. Not raining, but close enough to soak the mood. Evan stood by the edge of the duck pond, the kids beside him in a quiet row. When Natalie showed up, she looked like a different person, worn down, older, a shadow of the woman who had vanished years ago. Her jacket was thin, her eyes sunken, her steps unsure. "I've missed you," she said softly, voice trembling. No one replied. Madison folded her arms. Jordan wouldn't look up. Logan clung to Evan's leg. Natalie kept talking about how she'd been lost, how she was trying, how things had been hard. But her words felt weightless, bouncing off years of absence and hurt like pebbles on glass. Then Madison stepped forward. "What are we supposed to do with this?" she asked, not angrily, but truthfully. Natalie couldn't answer. The silence after that was thick, final. No hugs, no tears, just the sound of ducks and distant traffic. As they turned to go, Natalie's voice came again, this time barely a whisper. "I just hope you'll let me try." No one turned back. The car ride home was silent. No music, No questions, just the hum of tires and a quiet none of them wanted to break. That night, Evan sat on the edge of his bed when Madison appeared in the doorway. "She didn't even ask how we've been," she said. Evan nodded slowly. Nothing else needed to be said. "I'm proud of you," he told them gently. "Every single one of you." Because whatever Natalie had been hoping for, this wasn't it. These weren't the fragile kids she once left behind. They were stronger now, he had made sure of it, and they weren't going to fall apart just because she decided to show up again. After that meeting in the park, a heavy silence took root in the house. No one spoke of her, not directly, but the tension was there, in the way dinner plates clinked a little louder than usual, in the long pauses between bites, in the quiet glances exchanged at the table. Even Logan, who normally had 1,000 questions, barely said a word. Madison scrolled through her phone absently, then murmured, "She looked like someone who needed saving, not someone who came back for love." Evan didn't say anything, because deep down, he was starting to believe the same. 3 days passed, then the phone rang. It was the private investigator. "You may want to sit down," he warned. Evan listened closely as the truth came fast and hard. Natalie was in serious financial trouble. Her credit was wrecked, multiple cards maxed out, 2 civil suits pending, and an eviction filed less than 2 months ago. She'd held a string of temp jobs, none lasting more than 8 months, and the online fundraiser Madison had found, that was real and barely keeping her afloat. But the final blow hit hardest. "She's been talking about you," the investigator added, "mentioning your name to acquaintances, online threads. It's clear she thinks getting back into the kids' lives might solve her problems." Evan leaned back in his chair, still holding the phone, heart heavy but clear. There it was. She hadn't returned for a reunion. She'd come searching for a life raft. That night, he gathered the kids around the table. The air in the room was delicate, uncertain. He placed a manila folder on the table, full of printouts and evidence. "You deserve to see the truth," he said quietly. "No lies. No guessing." Madison flipped through the pages silently. Jordan read with furrowed brows. Logan leaned into Evan's side, wide-eyed. "She's struggling," Madison finally said, voice calm but sure. Evan nodded. "Yes, but not in the way she wants us to believe." Logan looked up, whispering, "So she's not here because she misses us?" "No, baby," Evan said, pulling him close. "She came back because she needs help, but that doesn't mean we owe her anything." The weight of it settled over them like fog. No one said a word after that. They didn't need to. The truth had done its job. Natalie hadn't returned for forgiveness. She had returned because she had nowhere else to go, and Evan had already made his decision. Later that night, once the house was quiet, he opened the drawer of his desk and pulled out an envelope he had sealed nearly 3 years before. Inside were neatly arranged documents, contracts, signatures, legal confirmations. The following evening, he sat the kids down again at the dining table. This time, there was something else in his eyes, relief. "There's something I've been waiting to share until the time felt right," he said. Madison looked up, curious. Jordan leaned forward, elbows on the table. Evan opened the envelope slowly, revealing official paperwork with embossed stamps and crisp signatures. "I've been saving for all of you, planning, investing, making sure that no matter what happens, you'll always be protected. Not just college, not just emergencies. Security." He took a breath. "And I worked with a lawyer to make sure no one could ever take you away from me." Madison's eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" Evan's voice was steady. "I adopted all 5 of you. It's official. It's permanent." Silence filled the room. Jordan blinked. Logan's jaw dropped. Even the youngest 2, usually in constant motion, sat completely still. "I wanted it to be permanent," Evan said, his voice steady. "No loopholes, no surprises, no courtroom arguments years from now. You are mine, legally, emotionally, in every way that counts." He looked at each of their faces. Madison blinked hard. "You did all that? Without telling us?" Evan gave a quiet smile. "Because love doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just works quietly behind the scenes, making sure you're protected even when you don't see it happening." Jordan's voice was low and shaky. "You didn't have to do all that. But you did." "I did because I had to," Evan replied. "Because you're my family, and I wasn't going to let anyone undo what we built. Not again." The room fell into silence except for the sound of quiet tears. Logan crawled into Evan's lap and clung to him. Madison reached out and squeezed his hand. That moment didn't need words, or music, or anything else. It was everything they had missed for over a decade. Certainty, not spoken, but felt. In the weeks that followed, peace quietly returned to the Whitaker home. Madison visited campuses. Jordan made the soccer team. Logan returned to his dance classes. The two youngest brought back the constant background of giggles and chaos. For the first time in years, they had space to dream again, without the looming fear of being uprooted. One night, Evan sat down and pulled out the final set of documents: adoption confirmations, trust fund paperwork, guardianship updates, every safeguard now sealed, every promise made official. What once had been fragile was now unshakable. Then, unexpectedly, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakable. Natalie. It was short, honest, sincere. She admitted it. She hadn't come back for the right reasons. Desperation had driven her, not love. She said she understood now, and that she wouldn't reach out again. Evan didn't write back. Through someone they both knew, he later heard she'd moved out of state, gotten into a work program, and was trying to rebuild without help. That chapter had quietly, finally closed. Back at home, the air felt different. Movie nights returned. Dinner became lively again. Laughter danced through every hallway. One evening, Madison stood at the kitchen sink and said, "You saved us." Evan shook his head, not missing a beat. "No," he said gently. "We saved each other." And from that day on, they kept moving forward. Stronger, wiser, united. Because the family Natalie had left behind no longer existed. This was the family Evan had built with his own two hands. He didn't just raise 5 kids on his own. He built a foundation they could stand on for life. Through long nights, sacrifices, and silent strength, he showed them that love isn't always loud. It's about showing up, again and again, no matter what. He never needed recognition. He just needed them whole, safe, and free. And in the end, he gave his children something their mother never could: a love without conditions, and security that no one could take away. So now I ask you, what would you do if someone you once trusted returned after vanishing for years, asking for a second chance? Would you open that door? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your story. And if this one moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the strength of real family, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.